We are in hurry-up mode for today for MLB DFS because the main slate on FanDuel is locking at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, which means not a lot of time to jam in all the info we need to fill out good lineups for today. Now, usually when we have like these weird slates on a Thursday, it means the slate's probably kind of bad. But actually for today, on the quote-unquote main slate, there are actually 8 games, and there are some good pitchers. There are some good stacks that I like. So honestly, it's a good slate. It just happens to lock, 6 hours earlier than usual. So let's talk about it, get you set for today's slate in MLB DFS, and send you on your way. Welcome on into the solo shop. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down today's 8-game main slate. Once again, lock is at 1:05 p.m. Eastern. So if you listen to this after 1:05, feel free to go about your day. If you're looking to play some NBA, though, I'll be swinging back today for our Q&A show. I'm not talking NBA. I am talking about it, but I will not be giving any analysis. Tom Vecchio of the Daily ISO here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed will join me 4 p.m. today to answer your questions about tonight's NBA DFS slate. I'll probably ask Tom some process-based questions because I'm not very good at NBA. So swing back here today, 4 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll talk about NBA. But if you're listening for just baseball, you're good to go if it's after 1:05 p.m. Let's talk about this slate. There is a chance of rain in St. Louis for the Cardinals and the Mets. Looks pretty okay. They should play that game, but just checking to closer to lock to make sure that one is good to go. Finally, from a temperature perspective, every game today has a temperature between 55 degrees and 65 degrees. So if we're talking about temperatures for today, it may seem low when we're talking about like Minneapolis and Boston and stuff like that. It's actually not a bad temperature if it's in the 50s because that's similar to everyone else. So we're good to go from a temperature perspective for today. You can play park factors pretty much straight up. Talked about basketball before, and speaking of basketball, FanDuel has partnered with the NBA to provide fans with an exclusive opportunity to win a trip to this year's NBA playoffs. All you have to do is enter the free qualifying contest on FanDuel from now through May 16th for a chance to win. FanDuel will add together your 3 highest scoring lineups to get your combined score. The top 50 players at the end of the contest will win bonus prizes on top of qualifying contest payouts, including a trip for 2 to the NBA playoffs, autographed gear from Fanatics, and NBA.com gift cards. Head over to FanDuel.com/NBA-road-2-playoffs for more information. I'd assume there's like a banner thing as well. Just go there. FanDuel.com, eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Thursday main slate. Garrett Cole is the highest salaried pitcher on the slate. He is $12,300 on FanDuel, followed by Danny Duffy at 10-7, Brandon Woodruff at 10-1. Hyun-Jin Ryu is coming off the injured list for today. He is $9,400. Zach Wheeler's 91. Michael Pineda, Nathan Eovaldi, and Lance McCullers are the others at $8,000 and higher. Now, for Garrett Cole at 12-3, it's not a great matchup. But I'm not sure how much it matters because I think we have to make him the top pitcher on the slate almost by default. It is a revenge game with the Astros. There's that. And the offense for the Astros perking up. They're also a low strikeout team. They have a 20% strikeout rate versus righties since the start of last year, which is the second lowest number on the slate. I do not target the Astros with pitchers ever, but it's really hard not to do so when that opposing guy is Garrett Cole. He's been lights out all year long. In his 6 starts, he has a 1.59 skill interactive ERA with a 44% strikeout rate and a 2% walk rate. Those are filthy, disgusting, just abominably good numbers. His strikeout rate is 10 percentage points higher than everybody else on this main slate. It is 13 percentage points higher if we look at just the guys who don't have a 20% walk rate, which means we'd need a team with like a 30% strikeout rate to truly move the needle here. There is one, but they're not really facing a guy in Cole's wheelhouse, so that's not the case. Cole is going to grade out well as a result, despite the tough matchup. We have seen him in a couple of lower strikeout matchups this year. He faced the Jays twice earlier on. They're a lower strikeout team. His strikeout rates in those games were 35% and 36% respectively. And those are his 2 lowest marks this year, which is absurd that his 2 lowest marks have come at 35 and 36%, but they're still very high. I think that there is enough here to love Cole despite the matchup, despite the salary at 12-3. I think it is justifiable to deviate elsewhere. So usually when Garrett Cole is on the slate, I say you use Cole number one, you log out. But I think for today, you have more leeway to deviate. So it's justifiable to not go Cole. I will still go Cole personally, but he will be at the top of my list. I think that he's not like a 60% exposure type guy, which he usually would be. For today, probably closer to 40%. I think that's justifiable for Cole, given the slight concerns around the matchup with the Astros. The second slot for me is kind of like a 3 or 4-way race among the higher salary guys. I'd be willing to consider all of Brandon Woodruff, Zach Wheeler, and Danny Duffy. All three of them have big strikeout upside. Nobody in the bunch has a bad matchup. I like the matchup most for Wheeler, and he is close enough to the others to make him defensible as a second pick. So let's go Wheeler number 2. He's actually a lot lower salary than I thought he'd be. He's 9-1. I was kind of surprised by that, but we'll take the discount for sure. Wheeler is facing the Brewers, and I stacked them yesterday. It was fine. It was not great by any means, but that was an exception. Stacking was an extreme circumstance there. They have been a punching bag for pitching pretty much all year long. They have just an 80 WRC plus against righties with a 27% strikeout rate. If we look at strikeout rate since the start of last year, they had the second highest strikeout rate on this slate. And now Christian Yelich is back on the injured list. I think that Zach Wheeler very easily can take advantage of this team. He's been using more sliders and fewer sinkers for the most part this year. We'd love to see that here on the solo shot. He has a 3.71 skill interactive ERA with a 27% strikeout rate. He's always had good batted ball data. That good batted ball data is here once again as well. He did go back a bit to the sinker his most recent start, and he also came back down in the slider usage. To me, that's a concern because I want the strikeouts. He still pitched well. The sinker's not a bad pitch. It's just not a high strikeout pitch. In that game, 7 innings, 6 strikeouts against the Mets. I do hope he goes back to the slider here. Even if he doesn't, the matchup should give him a high floor. That's why I'm not like pounding the table for Wheeler, even though his matchup is really good. I think that he is number 2, but not number 2 by a wide margin. Everyone else in the same tier as him. So we'll talk about Woodruff and Duffy and things to watch as other studs to consider, but I would put Wheeler number 2, but just note that Woodruff and Duffy are in the very same tier as him. If you're looking for someone saving a bit more salary than Wheeler, I think Nathan Eovaldi is your best option there. He's $8,600 at home against the Tigers, and it's only a $500 discount from Wheeler, so it's not a big savings, but Eovaldi is similar to Wheeler in that he is a very good pitcher who has strikeout upside because of his matchup. He's facing the Tigers. We always bump up pitchers facing them. They have an 85 WRC plus against righties with a 27% strikeout rate, and Eovaldi has some juice himself. He's been leaning more on his four-seam fastball overall this year, and when you're pumping it at 98 miles per hour, that's not a bad thing. It hasn't led to a ton of strikeouts, but he has some of the elements you look for in trying to find a guy with a high strikeout rate. It's 22% right now, but he has a 13.3% swinging strike rate. That's actually up from where it was last year, and last year his strikeout rate was 26%. His CSW percentage is also up, called strikes plus strike swinging percentage. Based on that, you would expect his strikeout rate, if we're projecting, closer to like 25 or so percent. If that's your baseline, you can generate upside against this Tigers team. Eovaldi, even without the big strikeout rate, has still gotten really good results this year. He had 10 strikeouts against the White Sox. Last time out, allowed just 1 run over 6 innings. He gets a good ground ball rate. He doesn't allow a lot of walks or hard contact. So, he's kind of, again, similar to Wheeler, where he is a solid real-world pitcher. And he's not always a great DFS pitcher because the strikeouts are lower, but this matchup, to me at least, makes him a really good one for DFS as well because of the upside the Tigers give to opposing pitchers. He is a very defensible play. I would probably put him in the same tier as Wheeler, Woodruff, and Duffy, but he'd probably be towards the bottom end of that list. It's a loaded slate of pitchers. So, again, you can pass over Cole if you want. But I would say we have enough value plays to make Cole affordable. I think that works. I think that he does provide a big edge because, although these guys are solid, they're not Garrett Cole. So to me, it is still Garrett Cole 1, but I understand if you want to go elsewhere with your pitcher for today. I'm going to give the stacking recommendations through the lens of using Cole because, again, if I'm going to push Cole on you, I should probably give you ways to make him more affordable. So that'll be the main discussion for today. But within each of these stacks, there are higher salary guys you can target. So it's not like I'm just giving out value stacks a la the Brewers last night. One of the fun things of this slate is that, again, like I mentioned in the open, we can kind of ignore temperatures a bit. That's good for the Twins because in the past week, it's been pretty cold in Minneapolis. They didn't do very well last night against Young. And today they face Jordan Lyles. I think that we should stack them once again, despite last night's relatively disappointing day. Lyles has the ideal stacking profile. He's letting up a lot of balls in play. He's not restrictive with his batted ball profile. Both those things are good for stacking, and I expect both those things to stick as the sample expands. Lyles has been leaning more on his slider over his past 9 starts. That does date back to the end of last year, so increasing the sample a bit. And in that time, he has a 4.94 skill interactive ERA with a 16% strikeout rate. His walk rate is low at 6%, but that means he's letting up a ball in play 78% of the time. He has allowed a 9.3% barrel rate. Only 30% of the balls have been on the ground, and that's why his ERA is 7.39 in this year specifically. His expected ERA is a bit better, but it's also at 6.25. So even if he does regress, or progress, I should say, it won't be to a pitcher we don't want to stack against. The Twins are a good team to stack as well. They rank 4th in ISO against righties this year. Not too many strikeouts, so it's pretty easy to get behind them as the top option for today. They don't have a ton of big-time value plays, so they might not be the best team for Cole, but I think the values elsewhere can still allow you to get to the Twins, unless you count Jake Cave as being a value, but got some solid mid-range plays here, so you can get to them with Cole. You'll just have to find some values in your second stack. Max Kepler is 29, Josh Donaldson 31. Neither guy's great numbers so far this year, but they're not striking out at outrageous rates. Their batted ball numbers are good enough to expect improvements, so I think you can build around them. I also would expect Jorge Polanco's numbers from a power perspective to get better as the year goes along. So Polanco, Kepler, Donaldson, all in play for today as mid-range options within this Twins team, and hopefully value plays elsewhere can help us get to Nelson Cruz and Byron Buxton. The temperatures aren't super high either in Oakland because, again, it's Oakland. But, again, doesn't matter as much for today. So we have the leeway to stack the Blue Jays facing Mike Fiers. They're very similar to Jordan Lyles. Fiers is very similar to Jordan Lyles, where he allows a ton of balls in play, and he doesn't have the best batted ball suppression numbers. If we look at last year in 11 starts, Fiers had a 4.58 ERA. His expected ERA was 4.83. So he earned that 4.58 ERA. Could have been even a bit higher had he been in a more hitting-friendly park. That was largely due to the batted balls that Fiers allowed. He had just a 35% ground ball rate. He had a 14% strikeout rate with a 6% walk rate. So similar to Lyles letting up a ball in play 79% of the time. He made his first start of the season last week and did see a couple changes there where Fiers used some more splitters, cut back on his sinker. We saw him doing that at the end of last year as well. The problem is that his batted ball data has gotten worse in that time where he's been doing this. He allowed an 8.7% barrel rate over his past 5 starts. That's not high overall. It's roughly league average, but when you're allowing that many balls in play, the aggregate number of barrels and hard hit balls is an issue. That's especially true against this Blue Jays team who puts a ton of balls in play, not a high strikeout team. We're going to get fly balls here. We just have to see what will happen with those fly balls. I'm okay taking on that variance, stacking a fly ball heavy team where it could go poorly, like with the Twins last night, but I do think that there is upside with it for sure. So I do want to go with the Jays here. With the Jays, we do get some big power bats in the middle of the salary tier. Randall Grichuk is $2,800. Teoscar Hernandez is $2,800 as well. Grichuk has a 43% fly ball rate versus righties. This is, I believe, since the start of last year. Teoscar has a 54% hard hit rate with a 38% fly ball rate. Teoscar can strike out a lot. It's just less of a concern when you're facing Mike Fiers, given his low strikeout rates. So I'm okay with that being the weakness here. I like both these guys a lot, Grichuk and Hernandez. I hope the salary that we're able to save between them and some other guys can help us get to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as well, because, shocker, he's very good. So Blue Jays and Twins, good for mid-range plays for today. I think we can get some decent low end values from the Nationals, and they're our third stack. And there's some risk here because Drew Smyly was awesome last year. I was pretty excited to see what he would do with Atlanta this year because I liked Smyly back in the day with the Rays before all the injuries. I've been waiting for him to come on for a while now. So last year was exciting, but the gains he made with the Giants have not carried over, and he is getting rocked. I think that means we can stack Washington here. A big part of the loss for Smyly is that his velocity is down from last year to open the year. In his first two starts, he was down about a mile per hour, which is normal. You kind of expect that early on in the year with the low temperatures. Then he went on the injured list in mid-April, missed about 2 weeks, and since coming back, his velocity has been down actually even a bit more. So now for the full season, his four-seam fastball velocity is down 1.5 miles per hour. He's not using his cutter as much, and it's led to some really bad results. The ERA is high, but also a 4.70 skill interactive ERA, a 21% strikeout rate. His swing and strike rate is way down, and he's getting barreled 16.1% of the time. Now, the barrel rate, the hard contact, was there last year too, but he was getting enough strikeouts to wash it out. He was pitching in San Francisco. He was able to overcome it as a result of those two things. He's not in San Francisco anymore, Toto, and now he's not getting as many strikeouts, so those issues are becoming really glaring. He has faced some tough teams, like Toronto in this stretch, but he also faced Washington earlier in the year. They scored 4 runs. 2 of those were earned off him in 6 innings, and they actually have pretty good numbers versus lefties since the start of last year. So I want to go with them here and see if they can do it one more time. We can get some value here with Starlin Castro and Yan Gomes. Neither guy is like a super exciting name to rattle off here, but they do hit lefties pretty well. They've had plenty of hard contact between the two of them since the start of last year against lefties. It is a small sample, but like longer term too, they're not bad. One thing I would be wary of with this team is lower tier guys batting lower in the order. So Juan Soto kind of lurking on the bench here. He can hit. Just sounds like he can't play defense yet, so I would not be shocked if he pinch hits potentially pretty early in the game. So a situation from either last night or 2 nights ago, they had Jordy Mercer start against the lefty, and they had Josh Harrison in the outfield. They pinch hit for Mercer later on with Soto, and then moved Harrison to the infield. That'd be a situation where I think that we want to be wary of the low end guys. Like with Castro, that's probably not going to happen. Yan Gomes is a catcher, so that's probably not going to happen. But I'd be wary of the super low end guys with the expectation that Soto pinch hits at some point. Just note that for sure when you're stacking the Nationals. Let's finish up here with things to watch. I do want to go through the other pitchers I like for today. So 5 total guys I really like. Didn't go through Woodruff and Duffy yet, so let's do that here. Woodruff is facing Zach Wheeler, the Phillies here, so fun pitching matchup there to flip on during work. And Woodruff is pitching really well once again. 3.04 skill interactive ERA, a 31% strikeout rate across 5 starts, basically no barrels against him. The Phillies are not the world's most imposing matchup. They're just not as much of a plus as the Brewers, which Wheeler is getting. Woodruff has had some issues with home road splits in the past, so that's sticking to my mind a bit, and it's enough for me to put him third behind Wheeler, but I will still consider him. Duffy has a good matchup from a floor perspective. It's not a super high strikeout one. He's facing Cleveland. They have a 20% strikeout rate versus lefties. That is the second lowest mark on the slate behind just Cole. I'm still willing to consider Duffy because he's been really good. He started to go back to his sinker again over his past 4 starts, which is annoying. But even if we look at just those 4 starts with his sinker usage back up, Duffy still has a 30% strikeout rate. I do like him, but the matchup for me is enough for me to put him behind Cole, Wheeler, and Woodruff in that order. Eovaldi, I'd probably put a tiny bit behind Duffy for today, despite the salary gap between them. So 5 really solid pitchers to use and 4 good alternatives if you are not like me and don't want to use Cole for today. Finally, 2 other offenses I'd be willing to stack are the Mets and the Braves. The Mets are facing John Gant, low strikeout guy. Hasn't hurt him yet so far this year because his ERA is 2.16, but his expected ERA is 5.49. He's going to regress eventually. I think the Mets, despite their struggles, worth a look for today. The Braves are facing John Lester, another revenge game here. He did a good job with contact suppression in his first start, but he struggled with that last year, led to a 5.16 ERA. So I prefer the Braves against righties in general because Freddie Freeman's more in play there, but Getting them against the lefty does mean we can feel better about Marcell Ozuna, Austin Riley, Dansby Swanson as value plays in the mid-range. So between those guys, the Nationals guys, I think we have enough value plays to make Cole affordable, and I'd like to get there for today. That is all we have for baseball for today. Make sure you go off and fill out those lineups, get them in before 1:05 p.m. Again, if you want to talk some NBA, we'll be on that at 4 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Again, I am not giving analysis because I'm bad at NBA, but Tom is good. We'll talk to Tom Vecchio today, 4 p.m. to 4:25. Get your questions in for Tom if you want to chat some NBA later on. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. No matter where you get your podcasts, we are there. You can find Tom's Daily ISO there each weekday to get you set for NBA, and also the Daily Deke for NHL. Don't know if that'll be going through the playoffs too, but you can find that overall there on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you have questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video side of this broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for today. Enjoy the day baseball. We'll talk to you once again for Friday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.